The cameras found her at the worst possible moment. Evelyn Carter, billionaire, CEO, one of the most powerful women in America, stood frozen on a snowy Aspen Street corner while photographers shouted her real name and a man she loved stared at her like she was a stranger. For 6 months, she'd been living as Eva, a struggling nobody testing whether anyone could love her without the money. 27 failed dates later, she'd finally found someone real. A mechanic. A single father. A man who didn't know her last name was worth $9 billion. Until 30 seconds ago. Before we dive into how everything fell apart, let me take you back to where it started. Stay with me until the end. This story gets darker before it finds light. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The morning Evelyn Carter decided to become someone else, she was sitting in a conference room 73 floors above downtown Denver, watching her former fiancé's lawyer slide a settlement offer across the mahogany table. Ms. Carter, my client believes this amount fairly compensates him for the emotional distress of your termination of the engagement. Evelyn didn't touch the paper. She'd already seen the number. $7 million. The price tag Marcus Whitehall had apparently assigned to 9 months of lying about loving her while secretly planning to leverage her fortune into a private equity position. Emotional distress, she repeated quietly. Her own lawyer, Patricia Chen, started to object, but Evelyn raised one hand. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind Marcus's legal team, she could see the Rocky Mountains cutting into a crystalline February sky, beautiful and completely indifferent to human stupidity. Tell your client he can have the $7 million, Evelyn said. On one condition. The lawyer's eyebrows lifted. Ms. Carter, I don't think... He has to admit in writing that he proposed because of my net worth, not despite it, because of it. She finally looked at the settlement papers. That's the deal. $7 million for the truth. Silence stretched across the conference room. We'll be in touch, the lawyer said finally, gathering his documents. They wouldn't be. Evelyn knew that. Marcus would rather walk away with nothing than confess he'd been running a long con. His pride couldn't survive that kind of honesty, which told her everything she'd needed to know. After they left, Patricia turned to her. That was strategic, right? You don't actually want to give him $7 million? I wanted to watch him choose his ego over free money, Evelyn said. Now I know for sure. She'd suspected for months. The way Marcus always steered conversations toward her company, his casual questions about board decisions and acquisition targets. That time she'd caught him photographing documents in her home office at 3 a.m. He'd claimed he was just interested in how she structured deals. The breaking point had come 2 weeks ago at a charity gala. She'd overheard him in the coat room talking on his phone. Trust me, once we're married, I'll have access to everything. The board won't know what hit them. Not, once we're married, I'll be the luckiest man alive. Not, I can't wait to spend my life with her. Just the cold calculus of access and leverage. Evelyn had walked into that coat room and ended the engagement on the spot. Marcus had been shocked. Apparently he'd underestimated her willingness to be alone rather than used. So what now? Patricia asked, closing her briefcase. Evelyn looked out at the mountains again. Now I disappear for a while. Disappear? Take a break. Step back from the company, think about things. What she didn't say. Figure out if anyone will ever want me for something other than my last name. Patricia studied her face. They'd known each other since law school, back when Evelyn was still building her first startup in a cramped apartment with secondhand furniture and unlimited ambition. Patricia had seen her through 3 successful exits, 2 failed acquisitions, and now 1 spectacular romantic implosion. You're not going to do anything reckless, are you? Patricia asked carefully. Define reckless. Evelyn, I'm fine. I just need some space to figure out who I am when I'm not being Evelyn Carter, tech billionaire. She'd started her first company at 23, a data analytics platform that had sold for $60 million before she turned 25. The second one, a cloud infrastructure business, had gone for nearly $500 million. By 28, she'd founded Carter Technologies, which was now valued at just over $9 billion and employed 4,000 people across 6 states. She'd built an empire. She'd earned every dollar through 90-hour weeks and decisions that kept her awake at night. She was proud of that, but somewhere along the way, her net worth had stopped being something she'd achieved and started being the only thing people saw when they looked at her. Marcus was just the latest in a long line of men who'd been more interested in her portfolio than her personality. Before him, there'd been David, who'd proposed after 3 months and then immediately started suggesting investment opportunities with his friends. Before David, there'd been Jonathan, who'd gotten surprisingly angry when she wouldn't give his failing startup a multi-million-dollar bailout. The pattern was exhausting. That evening, Evelyn stood in her penthouse apartment overlooking downtown Denver. 1,500 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, and absolute silence. She'd bought this place for the view. Now the view just felt like a reminder of how far removed she was from normal human experience. Her phone buzzed, text from her assistant. Board meeting moved to Thursday. Also, Forbes wants a comment on the engagement. Of course they did. Her personal life had become business news. That was the problem. She opened her laptop and started searching. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere she could think. Somewhere nobody would recognize her face from magazine covers. Aspen came up in the results. She'd been there once for a conference, barely noticed the town itself. Small. Wealthy. But in that low-key mountain way where people wore expensive outdoor gear instead of suits. Close enough to drive to, far enough to feel like escape. She booked a furnished rental for 2 months. A one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore. Nothing like her usual accommodations, but that was exactly the point. Then she did something that would have horrified her head of security. She turned off her phone's location tracking, disabled her work email, and told exactly 3 people where she was going. Patricia, her CFO, and her younger brother Jake, who was currently backpacking through Southeast Asia and couldn't tell anyone even if he wanted to. "You're really doing this," Patricia said when Evelyn called to confirm. "Just leaving." The company practically runs itself at this point. Michael can handle day-to-day operations. You've got the legal side covered. I'll check in once a week. That's not what I'm worried about. I know. Patricia was worried she'd fall apart, that this thing with Marcus had broken something fundamental, that Evelyn was running away instead of dealing with her problems. Maybe she was right. But Evelyn had spent years dealing with problems. She'd fought hostile takeovers, managed PR nightmares, navigated board politics, and survived 3 separate attempts by competitors to sabotage her contracts. She was good at dealing with problems. What she wasn't good at was being a person instead of a profit and loss statement. So she packed 2 suitcases, mostly casual clothes she never wore, leaving behind the designer wardrobe, and drove to Aspen on a Tuesday morning in early February. The apartment was smaller than her walk-in closet back in Denver. The furniture was worn but comfortable. The view was a side street with a coffee shop and a used bookstore instead of a mountain skyline worth millions. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. That first week, she didn't do much. Read books she'd been meaning to get to for years. Took long walks through town without anyone recognizing her. Ate at diners instead of restaurants that required reservations 3 months in advance. Wore her hair in a ponytail and cheap sunglasses and clothing from brands she'd never heard of. Nobody knew who she was. It was magnificent. The second week, she started wondering if she could take this further. The idea came to her in that same diner, a place called Mountain View that served breakfast all day and had vinyl booths patched with duct tape. She was reading a book, drinking terrible coffee, when she overheard 2 women talking at the next table. So then he asks what I do for work, and when I tell him I'm a nurse, he literally loses interest mid-sentence, starts checking his phone. What was he hoping for? I don't know. CEO of something? This is the 3rd date where a guy got weird when I didn't have some impressive job title. Men are idiots. Agreed. Evelyn found herself thinking about that conversation for days. These women were dealing with the opposite problem. Men who wanted someone successful and impressive instead of real and human. But the underlying issue was the same. People who couldn't see past labels and job titles to the actual person underneath. What if she just became someone else? Not legally, not permanently, just socially, just to see if anyone could like her without the billion-dollar qualifier attached. It felt insane. It also felt necessary. She started small. Changed her name on the dating app she'd downloaded on impulse. Eva instead of Evelyn. Used old photos from college before she'd started appearing in business magazines. Listed her occupation as between jobs. Her profile was aggressively normal. No mention of entrepreneurship or tech or anything that might hint at her real life. Just new to town, looking to meet interesting people, love books, hiking, and conversations that go somewhere unexpected. The responses started coming in immediately. Date number 1 was Connor, who spent 45 minutes talking about his CrossFit routine and didn't ask her a single question about herself. Date number 2 was Blake, who showed up drunk. Date number 3 was Adam, who seemed nice until he asked to borrow $200 before they'd even ordered food. She kept trying. Every week, sometimes twice a week, different men, same disappointing patterns. Men who talked over her. Men who clearly wanted someone to fix their problems. Men who were going through the motions of dating without actually being present. By late February, she had been on 14 dates and was starting to wonder if the problem was her. Maybe she was too cynical now. Maybe Marcus had broken her ability to trust people. Date 15 was with the lawyer named Craig, who seemed promising for exactly 20 minutes before he started explaining contract law to her like she was a child. Evelyn, who'd negotiated some of the most complex business deals in the tech industry, nodded politely and didn't mention that she probably understood contract law better than he did. Date 16 ended when the guy, she'd already forgotten his name, made a joke about how women aren't really funny and then got offended when she didn't laugh. By early March, Aspen had started its spring transition. The heavy snows were letting up, replaced by bright cold mornings and afternoons where you could almost feel winter losing its grip. Evelyn had been away from Denver for 5 weeks. She'd checked in with the office exactly 6 times. The company was fine. Thriving, actually. Turned out she wasn't as indispensable as she'd believed. That should have been comforting. Instead, it made her feel hollow. Date 22 was the worst. A venture capitalist named Preston, who somehow figured out who she really was halfway through dinner, she never found out how, and spent the rest of the meal pitching her his startup idea. When she declined to invest, he called her a cold bitch, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. She went home and cried for the first time since leaving Denver. Maybe this whole experiment was stupid. Maybe people were just inherently disappointing, and pretending to be someone else wasn't going to change that fundamental truth. But she'd committed to 2 months in Aspen. She had 3 weeks left. She decided to give it 5 more tries. If date 27 ended the same way as the previous 26, she'd accept defeat and go back to Denver and her real life, and the loneliness that came with it. Date 23, a ski instructor who spent the entire meal on his phone. Date 24, a financial analyst who asked if she'd considered getting work done to look younger. Date 25, actually pleasant, until he mentioned he was married and looking for something discreet. Date 26, didn't show up. She was ready to give up. Then she matched with Noah. His profile was sparse. One photo, not a selfie, just him standing next to a truck, smiling like someone had caught him off guard. His description was even simpler. Single dad. Work with my hands. Don't take myself too seriously. Looking for someone real. Everyone claimed they wanted someone real. That didn't usually mean anything, but something about the way he'd written it felt different. Less performative. More like he genuinely meant it. Evelyn, Eva, messaged first. Define real. His response came an hour later. Person who doesn't pretend everything's perfect. Someone who laughs at bad jokes and admits when they're wrong. Real. They messaged for 3 days before he suggested meeting for breakfast at Mountain View. The same diner where Evelyn had overheard that conversation about men being idiots. She almost said no. She was tired of hoping and being disappointed. Tired of sitting across from strangers and performing the ritual of getting to know each other while knowing it wouldn't go anywhere. But something made her say yes. The morning they were supposed to meet, Evelyn woke up at 5:30 and couldn't fall back asleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she was doing. This was date 27. Statistically, it would end the same way as the others. She should just cancel. Go back to Denver early, except that some people were meant to be alone. Instead, she got up, showered, and dressed in jeans and a sweater she'd bought at a thrift store. Something the real Evelyn Carter would never wear, which somehow made Eva feel more authentic. She arrived at Mountain View 10 minutes early and chose a booth near the window. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. A waitress with gray hair and kind eyes brought her coffee without being asked. Waiting for someone? The waitress asked. Maybe, Evelyn said. The waitress smiled like she understood something Evelyn didn't. 7:45 came and went. No Noah. Evelyn sipped her coffee and told herself this was fine. Expected, even. She'd been stood up before. Date 26 had been a no-show. This was just date 27 following suit. At 7:50, she decided she'd finish her coffee and leave. Enough was enough. At 7:53, the door opened and a man walked in wearing work boots and a jacket with motor oil stains on the sleeve. He was tall, dark-haired, and looked stressed in a way that seemed genuine rather than performed. He spotted her, and his expression shifted to relief. "Eva?" he asked, approaching the booth. "Noah? I'm so sorry I'm late." He slid into the seat across from her, slightly out of breath. "My daughter's reading program starts at 7:30, and the drop-off line was insane this morning, and then I hit every red light between there and here." He stopped himself. "I'm making excuses. I'm sorry. I should have texted." Evelyn found herself smiling despite herself. "It's okay. It's not, actually. You could have left. I would have deserved it." He pulled off his jacket. Underneath, he wore a faded flannel shirt that had clearly been washed 100 times. "Can I at least buy you breakfast to apologize?" "You don't have to. I want to." The waitress reappeared. "You must be the guy she was maybe waiting for." Noah grimaced. "Yeah, I'm the guy who almost blew it in the first 5 minutes." "Well, you're here now," the waitress said pragmatically. "What'll you have?" They ordered scrambled eggs for her, pancakes for him, coffee for both. After the waitress left, Noah leaned back in the booth and studied Evelyn's face in a way that should have felt invasive, but somehow didn't. "You're wondering if I'm worth the wait," he said. "Little bit." Honest answer? I don't know yet, but I'm hoping to find out. There was something disarming about that response. No bravado, no sales pitch, just honesty. "Fair enough," Evelyn said. They talked. Carefully at first. The way strangers do when they're trying to figure out if the person across from them is safe. He told her about his daughter, Sophie, who was 6 and had recently decided she wanted to be a paleontologist. Evelyn told him she'd moved to Aspen recently, needed a change, was figuring out what came next. Neither of them was lying, exactly. But neither of them was telling the whole truth either. "What do you do for work?" Noah asked eventually. This was the question Evelyn had been dreading, the one where she had to decide how much of herself to reveal. "I'm between things right now," she said, which was technically true. "Used to work in tech, taking some time to figure out what's next." That sounds both exciting and terrifying. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He didn't push for details, didn't ask what company or what position or how much she'd made. He just nodded like he understood the concept of being in transition. "I'm a mechanic," he offered. "Own a small shop on the edge of town. It's not glamorous, but I like working with my hands, fixing things, taking something broken and making it work again." That sounds satisfying. "It is, most days." He paused. "You work with your hands too?" "Not really. My work is more..." She searched for words. "Abstract. Problem solving. Strategy. Like chess?" "Kind of, yeah." Their food arrived. Noah dumped an inadvisable amount of syrup on his pancakes while Evelyn picked at her eggs. She wasn't particularly hungry, nerves were still doing complicated things to her stomach, but she ate anyway because not eating would have drawn attention. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said after a few minutes. "Sure." "Why Aspen? It's not exactly cheap here. If you're between jobs..." This was trickier territory. Evelyn had known the question would come eventually. She'd prepared an answer that was mostly true. "I needed to get away from Denver," she said. "Things ended badly with someone. I had some savings, figured I'd take a couple months to clear my head somewhere different." Noah's expression softened. "Sorry, that's rough." "It happens. Doesn't make it less rough." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Through the window, Evelyn could see snow starting to fall again. Light flurries that caught the morning sun and turned the street into something almost magical. "Your daughter," Evelyn said. "The reading program. Is that something she likes, or something you make her do?" Noah smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "She loves it. Started reading at 4. Now she tears through chapter books like they're going out of style. This morning, she told me she finished the entire Magic Treehouse series." "That's impressive." "She's smarter than I am. I'm just trying to keep up." He took a sip of coffee. Her mom would have been proud. The way he said it, past tense, quiet grief buried under casual words, made Evelyn's chest tighten. "I'm sorry," she said softly. 3 years now. Car accident?" Sophie was 3. She doesn't remember much. Noah stared into his coffee cup. Sometimes I don't know if that's better or worse. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. All her carefully constructed defenses, all her cynicism about human nature and dating and trust, none of it had prepared her for this kind of raw honesty from someone she'd met 30 minutes ago. I shouldn't have brought that up, Noah said. First date rule, don't trauma dump. Is this a date? I hope so, unless I'm reading this completely wrong. No, Evelyn said. You're not reading it wrong. He smiled again, smaller this time, but genuine. They talked for another hour. About books. They'd both read the Overstory recently and had strong opinions about the ending. About Aspen. Noah had lived here his whole life, watched the town transform from sleepy ski village to wealthy enclave. About small things and big things, and nothing things. At some point, Noah's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed a quick response, then looked apologetic. Sophie's program director. They're doing a craft project, and apparently they need glitter glue, which I forgot to pack in her bag this morning. Do you need to go? I've got 20 minutes before I need to be there. He hesitated. But I should probably wrap this up. I don't want to, for the record. This has been nice? Better than nice. You're not like the other people I've met on that app. Evelyn felt something complicated happening in her chest. You're not like the others either. Noah paid for breakfast despite her protests, leaving a generous tip that the waitress accepted with a knowing smile. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, accumulating on the sidewalks in a thin white layer. Can I see you again? Noah asked. 26 previous dates had ended with some variation of this question, and Evelyn had always felt relief when she could say no. This time, saying yes felt like stepping off a cliff. I'd like that. Same time next week? Sunday breakfast tradition? Okay. He started to walk away, then turned back. Hey, Eva? Yeah? Thanks for not leaving when I was late. Thanks for showing up. She watched him get into a beat-up truck with a faded bumper sticker that said, "My kid is smarter than your honor student." He waved before driving off, and she found herself waving back like an idiot. Walking back to her apartment, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too big and frightening, but possibility. Maybe. That night she called Patricia. "How's exile treating you?" Patricia asked. "I met someone." "Oh no." "What do you mean, oh no?" "You've got that tone. The one you get when you're about to make a decision, I'm going to have to clean up later." Evelyn laughed despite herself. "I'm not making any decisions. I just met someone. We had breakfast. It was nice. Nice like pleasant conversation, or nice like I'm going to blow up my life over this person?" "Somewhere in between." Patricia sighed. "Please tell me you're being careful." "I'm being careful." "Does he know who you are?" "No." "Evelyn, I know. I'll tell him. Eventually. I just want to see if this could be something first." "That's not fair to him." "I know that too." She did know. But knowing something was wrong didn't always stop you from doing it anyway. The Sunday breakfast thing stuck. Not because they planned it that way exactly. After their second meeting, same diner, same booth, different conversation, Noah mentioned he liked the routine, said it gave Sophie something to look forward to, knowing Dad had a standing thing on Sunday mornings after her reading program. "She asks about you," he'd said, almost embarrassed. "She doesn't even know me. I told her I met someone nice. She's 6. That's all the information she needs to build an entire fantasy narrative." By their 4th Sunday, Evelyn found herself thinking about these breakfasts during the week, planning things to tell him, wondering what he'd say about the book she was reading or the hiking trail she'd discovered. It felt dangerous, this anticipation, like she was forgetting why she'd started this whole experiment in the first place. She was supposed to be testing whether people could like her without knowing about her money. But somewhere between the 2nd and 5th breakfast, it stopped feeling like a test and started feeling like something else entirely. Something that could hurt her if she wasn't careful. March bled into early April and Aspen transformed around them. The heavy snow gave way to cold rain, then to bright mornings where you could almost smell spring trying to break through. The tourists thinned out. The town felt smaller, more intimate. Evelyn started recognizing faces at the grocery store, the coffee shop, the bookstore below her apartment. She was building a life here, a small, temporary, completely fake life. But still, Their sixth Sunday breakfast ran long because neither of them wanted to leave. Noah had a gap in his schedule. His first appointment wasn't until noon, and Evelyn had nothing but time. They ended up walking through town afterward, Noah pointing out landmarks from his childhood. That used to be a hardware store. Now it's a boutique that sells $100 candles. Have you ever bought a $100 candle? Do I look like I've ever bought a $100 candle? I don't know what people who buy $100 candles look like. He laughed. Rich. They look rich. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. She was wearing a thrift store jacket and boots she'd bought on sale, but underneath all that costume was exactly the kind of person who'd think nothing of spending $100 on a candle. She'd probably done it without even thinking about it. You okay? Noah asked. Yeah, just cold. He pulled her closer without asking permission, and she let him because refusing would have required an explanation she couldn't give. They walked like that for 2 blocks before Noah's phone rang. Sorry, I have to take this. It's the shop. He stepped away, and Evelyn watched him talk to whoever was on the other end. His expression shifted from relaxed to focused, and she could see the mechanic replace the man who'd been joking about expensive candles. I need to go, he said when he hung up. Emergency repair, tourist with a blown transmission, and apparently I'm the only person in town who can save his ski weekend. That's okay. I'm sorry, I wanted to. He stopped himself. Can I call you later? Of course. He kissed her before leaving. Quick, casual, like they'd been doing this for months instead of weeks. Evelyn stood on the sidewalk afterward, touching her lips like a teenager, feeling ridiculous and giddy and terrified all at once. That night, he called while she was reading. How was the transmission? She asked. Expensive. The guy was not happy about the bill. But you fixed it? Fixed it enough to get him back to California. Whether it stays fixed is between him and whatever mechanic he sees next. She could hear tiredness in his voice. Long day? Yeah, Sophie's asleep. I'm sitting in my truck in the driveway because if I go inside, I'll have to deal with the dishes I didn't do this morning, and I don't have it in me. Evelyn looked around her spotless apartment. She'd cleaned earlier because she didn't know what else to do with the nervous energy Noah left in his wake. Want me to talk to you while you work up the courage? That would be nice, actually. So they talked about nothing important, about a documentary she'd watched, about Sophie's latest obsession with dinosaurs, about whether coffee was better in the morning or late at night when you were too tired to sleep anyway. I like this, Noah said eventually. Sitting in your truck avoiding dishes? Talking to you, not having to impress you or perform or whatever. Just this. Evelyn's throat felt tight. I like it too. After they hung up, she sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Their 7th Sunday breakfast was interrupted by Sophie. Noah had mentioned the reading program let out at 8:30, and he usually had a solid 45 minutes before pickup. But apparently, this week the schedule had changed, and nobody had told him. His phone rang at 8:15. Mr. Bennett, Sophie's ready for pickup. Evelyn watched his face fall. I'm so sorry, he said after hanging up. I have to go. It's fine. It's not fine. This keeps happening. My schedule's a disaster, and I keep having to bail on you. Noah, go get your kid. He threw money on the table, too much again, and practically ran out of the diner. Evelyn sat there with half-eaten pancakes, feeling weirdly disappointed. Not because he'd left. That part made sense. But because she'd wanted to meet Sophie and hadn't realized it until the opportunity vanished. Her phone buzzed 5 minutes later. Noah. This is going to sound insane. Noah. But do you want to come with me to pick her up? Evelyn stared at the message. This was a line. Meeting the kid was a line you didn't cross unless things were serious. They'd known each other for 6 weeks. That wasn't serious. That was barely anything. Eva. Are you sure? Noah. No, but I'm asking anyway. She met him in the parking lot of the community center where Sophie's program met. He looked nervous, which made 2 of them. I didn't plan this, he said. I know it's fast. It's okay. She's going to ask you 1,000,000 questions. She has no filter. If she's too much, Noah, breathe. He breathed. They walked inside together, and Evelyn felt absurdly nervous. She'd negotiated with venture capitalists and hostile board members. She'd stood in front of auditoriums full of people and pitched ideas worth millions of dollars. But the prospect of meeting one 6-year-old made her palms sweat. Sophie was waiting in the lobby with a woman who looked like she ran on coffee and patience. The moment she saw Noah, her face lit up. "Dad, we made volcanoes! Look!" She held up a papier-mâché disaster covered in paint and glitter. "That's amazing, Bug." Then Sophie noticed Evelyn. Her eyes went wide. "Is this Eva?" Noah shot Evelyn an apologetic look. "Sophie, this is my friend Eva. Eva, this is Sophie." "You're really pretty," Sophie announced. "Dad said you were pretty, but I thought maybe he was exaggerating because grown-ups do that sometimes." "Sophie, it's okay," Evelyn said, fighting back a smile. "Thank you. Your volcano is very impressive. It's Mount Vesuvius. Do you know about Mount Vesuvius?" "I know it buried Pompeii." Sophie's whole face transformed with excitement. "You know about Pompeii? Dad doesn't know anything about Pompeii. He said it's a city that got covered in lava, but that's wrong. It was pyroclastic flow, which is different." "You're absolutely right. Can you come over? I have a book about it, with pictures." Noah started to object, but Evelyn found herself saying yes before she could think better of it. Noah's apartment was a 15-minute drive from the community center, in a complex that had seen better decades. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like someone was cooking something with too much garlic. It was about as far from Evelyn's Denver penthouse as you could get. Inside, the apartment was small but clean, with toys organized in bins and children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. A couch that sagged in the middle. A TV that was definitely not from this decade. Photos everywhere. Sophie as a baby, Sophie learning to walk, Sophie on her first day of school. And one photo of a woman with dark hair and Sophie's smile. Noah's late wife. Evelyn tried not to stare at it. "Sorry about the mess," Noah said, moving a stack of mail off the kitchen counter. "This isn't a mess. You're being nice." Sophie had already dragged Evelyn to the couch and was pulling books off a shelf. "This one has the best pictures, see? That's what Pompeii looks like now. All the people turn into statues, but they're not really statues. They're molds from where the ash covered them." Evelyn sat on the sagging couch and looked at the book with Sophie, who provided running commentary on every page. Noah disappeared into the kitchen and came back with coffee that was significantly better than the diner's. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I want to stay." And she did. That was the terrifying part. She ended up staying for 2 hours. Sophie showed her every book about archaeology she owned, plus her rock collection, her drawing of a T-Rex, and a dance she'd learned in gym class. Noah made grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch, and they ate them on the couch while Sophie explained the difference between herbivores and carnivores. "She likes you," Noah said when Sophie finally got distracted by a show on TV. "I like her." "This doesn't weird you out, the single dad thing?" Evelyn thought about how to answer that. In her real life, she'd dated men who talked about wanting kids someday in the abstract. Future hypotheticals. Not actual children with opinions about dinosaurs and volcanic eruptions. "No," she said finally. "It doesn't weird me out." He looked relieved. When Evelyn finally left, Sophie hugged her goodbye with startling intensity for someone so small. "Are you coming back?" Sophie asked. "If your dad says it's okay." "Dad, is it okay?" Noah laughed. "Yeah, Bug, it's okay." Walking back to her apartment that evening, Evelyn felt something shifting inside her chest. This wasn't the plan. The plan was to test whether people could like her without knowing about her money. Meet someone, date casually, see if it felt real. But this felt too real. She was falling for Noah. And worse, she was falling for Sophie, the kid who built volcanoes and knew way too much about Pompeii, and hugged like she was trying to squeeze all the sadness out of the world. When she got home, there was an email from her CFO waiting. Earnings report, quarterly projections. An acquisition opportunity in Portland that needed her sign-off. Evelyn stared at the email for a long time. In Denver, she was Evelyn Carter, billionaire, CEO. The woman who'd built an empire from nothing and answered to nobody. Here, she was Eva, woman with no job and unclear prospects, dating a mechanic, playing with a 6-year-old on a Sunday afternoon. She didn't know which version of herself was real anymore. The weeks started blurring together. Sunday breakfast stretched into Sunday afternoons at Noah's apartment. Evelyn became a fixture in Sophie's life, reading books together, helping with homework, watching her at the playground while Noah caught up on paperwork. It should have felt like playing house, like pretending, but it didn't. "You're good with her," Noah said one evening after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch between them. "She's an easy kid to be good with." Still, not everyone would put up with the chaos. Evelyn looked at Sophie, dead asleep with her mouth open and one hand clutching her stuffed rabbit. The chaos didn't feel like chaos. It felt like life. "I don't mind it," she said quietly. Noah carried Sophie to bed, and when he came back, he sat closer than before. They'd been dating for almost 2 months, but they'd been moving slowly, carefully, like both of them knew there was something fragile here that could break if they pushed too hard. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Okay." "You never talk about your family, or your friends in Denver, or your old job. It's like you appeared in Aspen fully formed with no history." "Everyone has history. So what's yours?" This was the moment. She could tell him the truth. Come clean about everything, the money, the fake name, the reason she'd started this whole experiment, get it over with. But Sophie was asleep in the next room, and Noah was looking at her like she mattered, and the truth felt too big and destructive to unleash into this small, safe space they'd built. "It's complicated," Evelyn said. "That's not an answer." "I know." Noah studied her face. "You're not ready to talk about it?" "Not yet." "Okay." He didn't push. That was one of the things she loved about him. He knew when to let things sit. "But eventually, right? If this is going to be something real." "Eventually," she agreed, hating herself. He kissed her then, slow and careful, and Evelyn kissed him back while guilt ate at her insides. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the small lies that had accumulated over 2 months. The fake name, the vague job history, the carefully edited stories about her past that omitted every detail that might give her away. She'd convinced herself this was necessary, a way to protect herself from people who only wanted her money. But Noah wasn't those people. Noah didn't care about money. He split the bill at diners and drove a truck held together with duct tape and hope. She needed to tell him. Tomorrow. She'd tell him tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and Sophie had a school project due, and Noah was stressed about a difficult repair at the shop, and it didn't feel like the right time. The day after that, Evelyn got an urgent call from her CFO. A competitor was trying to poach 3 of her top engineers. She spent 4 hours on the phone doing damage control, negotiating retention packages, making promises about the company's direction. When Noah called that evening, she was exhausted from being Evelyn Carter again. "Bad day?" he asked. "Something like that." "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Okay. Want to come over for dinner?" "Sophie's making art projects, which means the kitchen looks like a glitter bomb exploded, but you're welcome to witness the chaos." Evelyn went over. She helped Sophie with her art project, something involving pipe cleaners and way too much glue. She ate the pasta Noah made and pretended everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. She was living 2 lives, and the space between them was getting harder to navigate. In early May, Sophie's school had a spring concert. Sophie had been practicing her song for weeks, something about flowers and sunshine that she sang at full volume every chance she got. "You should come," Noah said. "I mean, if you want. No pressure." "I want to." The concert was in the elementary school gymnasium, which smelled like old basketballs and industrial cleaner. Evelyn sat with Noah in folding chairs that were definitely designed for people smaller than them, surrounded by other parents with cameras and proud expressions. Sophie was in the front row, wearing a dress Noah had clearly struggled to get her into. When she spotted them in the audience, she waved so enthusiastically she nearly hit the kid next to her. "She's going to be a disaster," Noah said fondly. "She's going to be great." The concert was exactly what you'd expect from a group of 6-year-olds. Chaotic, off-key, and absolutely perfect. Sophie forgot half the words and made them up as she went. Noah recorded the whole thing on his phone, grinning like an idiot. Afterwards, Sophie ran over and launched herself at both of them. "Did you see me? I remembered most of the words." "You were amazing," Evelyn said. "The best," Noah agreed. They went out for ice cream after. The 3 of them squeezed into a booth at a place that served portions way too large for human consumption. Sophie got chocolate everywhere. Noah tried and failed to keep her contained. Evelyn laughed harder than she had in months. Walking back to the car, Sophie grabbed both their hands and swung between them, singing her concert song again with even less accuracy than before. Someone took a picture. Evelyn didn't notice at the time. Didn't think about how they looked, like a family. Didn't consider that someone might recognize her, even in jeans and a casual jacket, even with her hair pulled back and no makeup. She was too busy being happy. That night, after Noah dropped her off, Evelyn checked her phone and found 7 missed calls from Patricia. "Where the hell have you been?" Patricia said when she called back. "Watching a school concert. Why?" "There's a photo of you circulating. Someone posted it on social media. You're holding hands with some guy and a kid, and people are asking questions." Evelyn's blood went cold. "What kind of questions?" "The normal kind. Who is she dating? Is that her kid? When did Evelyn Carter become domestic? Your PR team is having a meltdown. They want to know if they should issue a statement." "No statement." "Evelyn, I said no statements. It's my personal life. They don't get to make it a press release." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You're really serious about this guy?" "Yeah." "Does he know who you are yet?" Evelyn closed her eyes. "No." "You need to tell him before someone else does." "I know." "When?" "Soon." "That's what you said last month." "I mean it this time." She did mean it, but meaning something and doing it were different things. The photo didn't blow up the way Patricia feared. A few people shared it, some commented, but mostly it faded into the background noise of social media. Evelyn Carter at a school concert with a mystery man and child. Barely a story. But it was enough to make Evelyn paranoid. She started wearing sunglasses more. Changed her hair. Avoided anywhere downtown that might have tourists with phones. She was being ridiculous, she knew. Aspen was full of wealthy people. Nobody was looking for her here, except maybe they were. In mid-May, Noah noticed the watch. She'd worn it without thinking, a vintage Patek Philippe she'd bought herself after her second successful exit. It lived in her jewelry box in Denver, but she'd grabbed it during her last quick trip back to the city for a board meeting. They were having dinner at his place, and she'd rolled up her sleeves to help with dishes when he caught her wrist gently. "That's a nice watch," he said carefully. Evelyn's heart stopped. It was a gift. "From who?" "An ex. I should probably stop wearing it, but..." She shrugged, trying to seem casual while her pulse hammered. "Habit, I guess." Noah let go of her wrist, but something had shifted in his expression. Not suspicion exactly, more like he was putting pieces together and didn't like the picture they made. "Must have been some relationship," he said. "That's like a $20,000 watch." "I don't know what it cost." "Eva." He said her name, her fake name, like he was testing it. "Who are you?" "What do you mean?" "You show up in Aspen with no job and expensive taste. You never talk about your past. You're vague about everything. And now you're wearing a watch that costs more than I make in 6 months." Evelyn felt the walls closing in. "It's complicated. You keep saying that. Because it is. Try me." She opened her mouth to tell him everything. The words were right there, queued up and ready. But before she could speak, Sophie called from the bedroom. "Dad, Mr. Rabbit fell behind the bed again." The moment broke. Noah looked torn between continuing the conversation and dealing with his daughter's stuffed animal crisis. "We're not done talking about this," he said. "I know." He went to help Sophie, and Evelyn stood in the kitchen, shaking. She needed to tell him. Tonight. As soon as Sophie went to bed, she'd sit him down and explain everything. But when Sophie finally fell asleep and Noah came back to the living room, he looked exhausted. "Long day?" Evelyn asked. "Yeah, look, about earlier." "I'll tell you everything. I promise. Just, can it wait until tomorrow, when we're both less tired?" He studied her face, and she could see him deciding whether to push. "Tomorrow," he agreed finally. "But actually tomorrow. Not eventually tomorrow. Actually tomorrow." She went home that night knowing she'd run out of time. Tomorrow she'd tell him everything, and either he'd understand or he wouldn't. Either way, the line would be over. She barely slept. The next morning, she got up early and rehearsed what she'd say. Practiced different versions, different approaches. How do you tell someone you've been lying about your identity for 3 months? How do you explain that every moment you've shared was built on deception, even if the feelings were real? Her phone rang at 7:30. "Noah." "Hey," she answered. I was just about to turn on the news. What? Local news. Channel 5. Evelyn fumbled for the remote and turned on the TV. It took her a moment to understand what she was seeing. A reporter standing outside Carter Technologies headquarters in Denver. A story about a major acquisition that had just been announced. And then, filling the screen, a photo of her from a tech conference 6 months ago. Evelyn Carter, CEO of Carter Technologies, one of Colorado's youngest self-made billionaires. She turned off the TV. The phone was still pressed to her ear. Noah hadn't hung up. Noah, is that you? She couldn't lie anymore. Yes. Silence stretched between them. You're a billionaire, he said finally, voice flat, and you've been pretending to be broke for 3 months. I wasn't pretending to be broke, what do I call you? Is it even Eva? Evelyn. My name is Evelyn. Right, Evelyn, not Eva. Because Eva was a character you were playing. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. She tried. Sitting in her apartment with morning light streaming through the windows, she explained about Marcus and the betrayal and the 27 dates and the desperate need to know if anyone could want her for something other than her bank account. Noah listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I need some time. Noah, I'm not angry. I don't know what I am. I need to think. Can I see you? Can we talk in person? Not today. I'll call you. He hung up. Evelyn sat on her couch, staring at the dead phone in her hand, and realized she'd just lost the best thing that had happened to her in years, all because she'd been too scared to be honest. He didn't call. Not that day. Not the next. By the third day, Evelyn stopped checking her phone every 15 minutes and started checking it every 5. Patricia called instead, which was somehow worse. The story's getting traction, she said. People are connecting the dots. Mystery woman from the photo, the news coverage, your sudden absence from Denver. The PR team wants to. I don't care what the PR team wants. Evelyn, I screwed up. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. That's not a PR problem. That's just me being an idiot. Patricia went quiet for a moment. You really care about this guy. His name is Noah, and yes. Then fix it. I don't know how. You built a billion-dollar company from nothing. You've survived hostile takeovers and board rebellions and competitors trying to destroy you. But one mechanic has you paralyzed? Evelyn laughed, but it came out broken. He's not just one mechanic, and I can't fix this the way I fix business problems. I can't negotiate or strategize my way out of lying to someone for 3 months. So what are you going to do? I don't know. She'd never been good at not knowing. Her entire life had been about having answers, making decisions, moving forward with confidence even when she was terrified. But this was different. This was Noah deciding whether she was worth forgiving, and there was nothing she could do to influence that outcome. The waiting was killing her. On the 4th day, she broke down and texted him. I know you need space. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry for all of it. 3 hours later, her phone buzzed. Noah. I know. That was it? 2 words. Not I forgive you, or I understand, or let's talk. Just acknowledgement that he'd received her apology. Evelyn stared at those 2 words until they stopped looking like language. She wanted to text back, to push for more, to demand a real conversation. But she'd already taken enough from him without permission. The least she could do now was respect his boundary. So she put her phone down and tried to figure out how to exist in the space between hope and acceptance. The 5th day, she ran into Sophie. It was completely accidental. Evelyn had gone to the grocery store because sitting in her apartment was making her crazy, and apparently Sophie's school had a field trip to learn about where food came from, or something equally educational. Evelyn was in the produce section, pretending to care about the difference between organic and conventional apples, when she heard a familiar voice. Eva! She turned and there was Sophie, wearing a bright yellow field trip t-shirt and holding hands with a teacher who looked mildly concerned about the child-breaking formation. Hi, Sophie. I didn't know you shopped here. We're learning about vegetables. Did you know carrots used to be purple? Dad didn't know that, but I told him because I know lots of things. The teacher started to pull Sophie back toward the group, but Sophie planted her feet like a tiny, immovable object. Are you coming over soon? Dad's been really sad, and I think it's because you haven't visited. Did you have a fight? My friend Emma's parents fight sometimes, but then they eat ice cream and it's okay again. Maybe you and Dad should eat ice cream. Evelyn's throat felt like it was closing. It's a little more complicated than that, sweetie. That's what Dad said. But I don't understand what's complicated. You like him. He likes you. I like you. That seems simple. Sophie, we need to catch up with the group, the teacher said gently. Can you tell Dad to stop being sad? Sophie asked as she was being led away. I don't like it when he's sad. I'll try, Evelyn managed. She abandoned her shopping cart and left the store, sitting in her car in the parking lot with her head on the steering wheel. She'd hurt Noah, which was bad enough. But she'd also hurt Sophie, who hadn't asked to be part of this mess and didn't understand why the person she'd grown attached to had suddenly vanished. That was unforgivable. She drove to Noah's shop without letting herself think about it too hard. If she thought about it, she'd talk herself out of going. She'd rationalize that he'd asked for space and she should respect that. But Sophie's face in the grocery store had broken something in her chest, and she needed to at least try. The shop was on the edge of town, a building that had definitely seen better decades. The sign out front said Bennett's Auto Repair in faded letters. There were 3 bays, 2 of them occupied with vehicles in various states of disassembly. Noah was in the 3rd bay, lying on one of those rolling boards mechanics use to slide under cars. All she could see were his legs and the work boots he always wore. We're closed, he called without sliding out. It's me. The sound of tools stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Noah rolled out from under the car, and Evelyn's heart cracked at the expression on his face. He looked tired. Not physically tired, though there was that too. Emotionally exhausted in a way she recognized from her own mirror. You shouldn't be here, he said, but there wasn't much conviction in it. I ran into Sophie at the grocery store. He closed his eyes. Of course you did. She said you're sad. She's 6. She thinks everything is about her. Is it? Some of it. He sat up, wiping his hands on a rag that made them dirtier rather than cleaner. She keeps asking when you're coming back. I don't know what to tell her. What do you want to tell her? I don't know. He stood up and Evelyn realized how much she'd missed just looking at him. I've been trying to figure out if I'm angry or hurt or both. Whether what we had was real or just you running an experiment. It was real. Was it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were testing me, seeing if I'd pass some kind of character evaluation. That's not... She stopped herself. Okay, maybe at first, but that stopped being true pretty fast. When? When did it stop being an experiment and start being real? She thought about it. The first Sunday, when you called your daughter to say goodnight and I watched you through the window. That's when I stopped thinking about this as a test and started thinking about you as someone I wanted to know. Noah stared at her. That was the first date. I know. So you've been lying to me for 3 months, even though you knew it was real? Yes. At least she could give him honesty now, even if it came too late to matter. He turned away, running his hand through his hair in frustration. I don't understand how you could do that. How you could look at me every Sunday and let me tell you about my life while you were hiding everything about yours. I was scared. Of what? That I'd want your money? I don't want your money, Evelyn. I want... He stopped himself. What? What do you want? I wanted to know the person I was falling in love with was real. That's it. That's all I wanted. The past tense gutted her. I am real. The person you got to know, that was me. The real me, not the CEO version. Everything I told you about who I am, what I like, how I think about things, that was all true. Except your name, and your job, and your entire life situation. Everything that mattered was true. You don't get to decide what mattered. His voice rose, then immediately dropped back down. Sorry, I don't want to yell at you. You should. I deserve it. That's not how this works. He sat down on an overturned bucket, suddenly looking exhausted. I've been trying to put myself in your position, trying to understand why you'd lie. And I get it, intellectually. You got burned. You wanted to protect yourself. But emotionally, I keep coming back to the fact that you didn't trust me. I didn't trust anyone. I'm not anyone. I'm the guy who introduced you to his daughter after 6 weeks. Do you know what that meant? I haven't dated since my wife died. 3 years, Evelyn. 3 years of being alone because I didn't want Sophie getting attached to someone who wouldn't stick around. His voice cracked. And then you came along, and you were so good with her, and I thought maybe we could be a family, all three of us. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. I wanted that too, but not enough to be honest with me. I was going to tell you, that morning, when you called about the news, I was literally rehearsing what I'd say. 3 months too late. He was right. She knew he was right, but hearing him say it still felt like being cut open. I can't fix this, can I? She said quietly. Noah looked at her for a long time. I don't know. Maybe, but not today. I'm still too... He gestured vaguely. Everything. Okay? I'm not saying no, I'm saying I need more time. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't a door slamming shut either. Evelyn clung to that small piece of maybe like it was a life raft. Take all the time you need, she said. I'll be here. She left before she could say anything else that might make things worse. Drove back to her apartment and finally let herself cry, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body and accomplished nothing except making her face blotchy. Patricia called again that evening. How bad is it? She asked. Pretty bad. Is there anything I can do? No, this is one I have to fix myself. Or not fix. Or not fix, Evelyn agreed. She'd spent her entire adult life fixing things. Building companies, solving problems, finding solutions, but you couldn't solve your way out of breaking someone's trust. You could only wait and hope they decided you were worth a second chance. The waiting felt impossible. A week passed, then another. Evelyn fell into a routine that was equal parts punishment and patience. She stayed in Aspen even though being there hurt. Went to the diner every Sunday morning and sat in their booth alone, hoping Noah might show up. He never did. She saw Sophie once more, at the park. The little girl ran over immediately, and Evelyn's heart broke all over again. Dad says you and him are taking a break, Sophie announced. Like when I take a break from homework, does that mean you'll come back when the break is over? I hope so. Me too. Mr. Rabbit misses you. Noah appeared a moment later, looking uncomfortable. They had a brief, painful conversation where they were both aggressively polite and careful not to say anything that mattered. Then Sophie's friend called her over to the swings, and Evelyn left before the awkwardness could get worse. By mid-June, she'd accepted that maybe this was just over, that some mistakes were too big to come back from, and lying about your identity for 3 months was one of them. She started making plans to go back to Denver. She'd given it her best shot, hadn't she? Tested whether people could love her without the money, and gotten her answer. They could. Noah had, but only if she was honest, which she hadn't been. The lesson felt brutal but fair. She was packing when her phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Evelyn Carter? A woman's voice, official sounding. Yes. This is Mountain View Elementary School. We have you listed as an emergency contact for Sophie Bennett. Evelyn's blood went cold. What's wrong? We've been trying to reach Mr. Bennett for the past hour, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. Sophie is sick. Fever, complaining of stomach pain. We need someone to pick her up. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up and immediately tried calling Noah. Voicemail, texted him. No response. Called the shop. The phone rang and rang with no answer. There wasn't time to track him down. Sophie needed someone now. Evelyn drove to the school faster than was probably legal, her mind racing through possibilities. Emergency contact meant Noah had never taken her off the list. Even after everything fell apart. That had to mean something, right? Or maybe he just hadn't gotten around to updating the paperwork. Sophie was in the nurse's office, looking small and miserable on a cot that was too big for her. Eva! She tried to sit up, then immediately lay back down. My tummy hurts. I know, sweetie. We're going to get you home. Where's Dad? I'm trying to find him, but I'm here now, okay? The nurse gave Evelyn instructions. Watch for vomiting, keep her hydrated, call if the fever spikes above 102. Evelyn listened carefully and signed the release form with hands that shook slightly. Getting Sophie to this car was an adventure. The kid could barely walk, so Evelyn ended up carrying her, which made Sophie burrow into her shoulder in a way that was both sweet and heartbreaking. You smell nice, Sophie mumbled. Like books. That's a new one. It's a good smell. Evelyn strapped her into the car seat, thankfully still in her car from their last park visit. and drove to Noah's apartment. She still had the spare key he'd given her months ago, back when things were good and uncomplicated. The apartment felt empty without Noah in it. Evelyn got Sophie settled on the couch with blankets and water, then tried calling Noah again. Still nothing. She checked the kitchen, found medicine in the cabinet, gave Sophie the appropriate dose for her age and weight. The little girl swallowed it with a grimace. "This is gross." "Medicine usually is. When I grow up, I'm going to invent medicine that tastes good." "That's a solid plan." Sophie lay back down, hugging Mr. Rabbit. "Are you staying until Dad gets here?" "Of course." "Promise?" "Promise." Sophie fell asleep within 20 minutes, the fever medicine doing its job. Evelyn sat on the floor next to the couch, one hand on Sophie's forehead to monitor her temperature, and tried Noah's number for the 5th time. This time he answered. "Evelyn?" He sounded confused. "Sorry, I was under a car and didn't hear my phone. Did you?" "I have Sophie. The school called. She's sick." "What? Is she okay?" "Fever, stomach pain. I gave her medicine. She's sleeping now." "I'm coming home." She heard noise in the background, tools being dropped, footsteps. "Why did the school call you?" "I'm still listed as her emergency contact." A pause. "I forgot to change that." "It's okay. I'm glad I could help." "I'll be there in 15 minutes." He made it in 12. Evelyn heard his truck pull up, heard him take the stairs 2 at a time. When he burst through the door, his face was tight with worry. "Where is she?" "Couch." "Still sleeping. Temperature's down to 99.8. He crossed to Sophie immediately, checking her forehead himself, like he didn't quite trust Evelyn's assessment. Then he seemed to realize what he was doing and looked embarrassed. "Sorry, it's okay. She's your kid." He sat on the edge of the couch, one hand on Sophie's shoulder. The little girl stirred but didn't wake up. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for picking her up, for staying." "Of course." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." They sat there in awkward silence for a few minutes. Evelyn should probably leave now that Noah was home, but she couldn't quite make herself stand up. "The nurse said it's probably just a virus," she said finally. "Should clear up in a day or 2, but if she gets worse, I'll call the doctor. I know the drill." More silence. "I should go," Evelyn said, even though she didn't want to. "Wait." Noah stood up, careful not to disturb Sophie. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" They went into the kitchen, leaving the door cracked so Noah could hear if Sophie woke up. "I've been thinking," he said. "A lot. About everything." Evelyn's heart hammered. "Okay." "You lied to me. That's not something I can just get over. Trust it's everything to me. Especially with Sophie in the picture. I can't have people in her life who aren't honest." "I know, but," he ran his hand through his hair, "I also understand why you did it. Not saying it was okay, just that I understand. That's more than I deserve." "Maybe." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Here's what I can't figure out. When you were with us, with me and Sophie, was that real? Or were you just playing a part?" "It was real, every second of it. Even knowing you were lying the whole time, I wasn't lying about how I felt. I was lying about my circumstances. That's different. Is it?" "I think so. I hope so." Noah studied her face for a long moment. "You hurt me. You know that, right? I wasn't just embarrassed that you were rich and I didn't know. I was hurt that you didn't trust me enough to be honest." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are," he sighed, "but sorry doesn't fix everything." "What would fix it?" "I don't know. Time, maybe. And honesty from here on out. Complete honesty. No more hiding things." "I can do that." "Can you?" "Because being with me means being with Sophie, too. It means not disappearing when work gets busy or when your CEO life calls you back to Denver. It means being present and consistent and real. I want that. I want all of that." "What about your company? Your life in Denver?" Evelyn took a breath. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, but saying it out loud made it real. "I'm stepping down as CEO." Noah's eyebrows shot up. "What?" "Not completely. I'll stay on the board, consult on major decisions. But day-to-day operations? I'm done. My CFO is more than capable of running things, and I have an executive team that's been doing most of the work anyway. Because of me? Because of me. Because I realized I've spent 10 years building a company and 0 years building a life. Because I don't want to be Evelyn Carter, billionaire CEO. I want to be Evelyn, just Evelyn, with you and Sophie. If you'll still have me. He didn't say anything for a long time, just looked at her like he was trying to see through to something underneath. You're serious, he said finally. Completely. What if this doesn't work out? What if we try again and it falls apart? Then you'll have given up your company for nothing. It wouldn't be for nothing. Even if we don't work out, I needed to step back. I just didn't know it until I met you. Sophie coughed from the other room. They both turned toward the sound, but she settled back into sleep without waking. I'm not ready to jump back into this like nothing happened, Noah said. I need to know you're committed, that you're not going to disappear when things get hard. How do I prove that? I don't know. But not by making grand gestures or promises, by showing up, consistently. For me and for Sophie. I can do that. We'll see. It wasn't agreement, but it wasn't rejection either. Sophie misses you. She asks about you every day. I miss her too. Maybe. He stopped himself, then started again. Maybe you could come by tomorrow, if Sophie's feeling better. Just a visit. I'd like that. This doesn't mean we're back together, he clarified. I'm not ready for that yet. I understand. But maybe we can try being friends, see where it goes from there. Friends. It wasn't what Evelyn wanted, but it was more than she'd had 24 hours ago. She'd take it. Friend sounds good, she said. They heard Sophie stirring on the couch. Noah went to check on her, and Evelyn followed. The little girl's eyes fluttered open, still glassy with fever, but more alert than before. Dad? Hey, Bug, how you feeling? Weird, my tummy still hurts. She noticed Evelyn. You stayed. I promised I would. Are you and Dad friends again? Noah and Evelyn exchanged glances. We're working on it, Noah said. Good. I don't like it when you're sad. She fell back asleep before either of them could respond. Evelyn left shortly after, promising to check in tomorrow. As she drove back to her apartment, she felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Not hope, exactly. Hope still felt too big and dangerous. But possibility. Again. Still. Maybe. Being friends with someone you'd fallen in love with was harder than Evelyn expected. She showed up the next day like Noah had suggested. Sophie was still sick but improving, and she lit up when Evelyn arrived with a new book about ancient Egypt. Dad said you might not come, Sophie said, already flipping through the pages. Did he? Noah had the decency to look embarrassed. I said she might be busy. I wasn't busy. They spent the afternoon reading on the couch while Noah worked on his laptop at the kitchen table, some kind of inventory management that made him mutter unflattering things about technology. It felt almost normal, except for the careful distance Noah maintained. No casual touches, no inside jokes, just polite coexistence in the same space. When Evelyn left that evening, Sophie hugged her goodbye, but Noah just nodded from the doorway. Friends, Evelyn reminded herself. This is what friends looks like. It didn't make it hurt less. The pattern continued over the next 2 weeks. Evelyn would visit every few days, always invited by Noah, but never with any warmth beyond basic courtesy. She'd play with Sophie, help with dinner, exist in their orbit without actually being part of it. The worst part was knowing it was her own fault. This is painful to watch, Patricia said during one of their phone calls. Either he forgives you or he doesn't. This middle ground is just torture for everyone. He needs time. How much time? However much he needs. Patricia made a frustrated sound. You know what the old Evelyn would have done? She would have cut her losses and moved on, found someone who wasn't this complicated. The old Evelyn didn't know what she was missing. And the new Evelyn is willing to wait indefinitely for a mechanic who may never forgive her? Yes, you've changed. I know. She had changed. A year ago, she would have seen Noah's hesitation as weakness or indecision, would have grown impatient with his need for time and space. But now she understood that some things couldn't be rushed. Trust once broken, didn't heal on a schedule. So she waited, and showed up, and tried to prove through actions what words couldn't convey. The first real shift came in early July. Sophie's school was doing a summer reading program, and she'd signed up for every event they offered. One of them was a parent-child book club. Read the same book, then come discuss it together. The problem is, I have a break job scheduled right when the thing starts, Noah told Evelyn during one of her visits. And I can't reschedule. The guy's driving to California the next day. I could take her, Evelyn offered. Noah hesitated. You don't have to do that. I want to, if you're okay with it. He studied her face for a long moment. You read the book? I will. The book was a middle-grade fantasy about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Evelyn finished it in one sitting, surprised by how much she enjoyed it. The main character reminded her of Sophie, curious, stubborn, convinced she could fix everything if people would just listen to her. The book club met at the library on a Saturday afternoon. Evelyn arrived early, suddenly nervous about being the only non-parent in a room full of families. But Sophie grabbed her hand the moment she walked in, dragging her to a table near the front. This is my Eva, Sophie announced to the other kids. She's really smart, and she knows about Pompeii. The librarian running the event didn't bat an eye at Sophie's introduction. They went around the circle sharing favorite parts of the book, and Evelyn found herself genuinely enjoying the discussion. One kid thought the ending was too neat. Another wanted a sequel. Sophie had strong opinions about which animal the main character should have talked to first. Definitely the owl, Sophie insisted. Owls are wise, everyone knows that. But the dog was loyal, another girl argued. You can be wise and loyal. Afterward, they got ice cream, a tradition, Sophie informed her, that Dad always upheld after book club. Evelyn bought 2 cones and listened to Sophie chatter about the next book they'd be reading. It's about space, Sophie said through a mouthful of chocolate chip. Dad's gonna hate it. He doesn't like space stuff. Why not? He says it makes him feel small. Evelyn thought about that. Noah, who worked with his hands and fixed tangible problems, uncomfortable with the vast emptiness of the universe. It tracked. When she dropped Sophie back at the apartment, Noah was finishing up a shower. He emerged with wet hair and an old t-shirt, looking younger than usual. How was it? He asked. Good. Sophie has opinions about owls. Sophie has opinions about everything. He grabbed his wallet. What do I owe you for the ice cream? Nothing. It was my treat. Evelyn? Noah, it's fine. He looked like he wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. Thank you. For taking her. She had fun. So did I. Something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. You really like spending time with her. Of course I do. She's great. Even the dinosaur lectures? And the random facts about volcanic eruptions? Especially those. Noah sat down heavily on the couch. I keep waiting for you to get tired of this. The small-town life, the kid stuff, the complete lack of glamour. That's not going to happen. How do you know? Because this is the first time in 10 years I've felt like a person instead of a resume. He didn't say anything to that, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Stay for dinner? He asked finally. Okay. They made spaghetti together while Sophie worked on an art project at the table. It wasn't fancy. Sauce from a jar, pasta that was slightly overcooked, but it was the best meal Evelyn had eaten in weeks. After Sophie went to bed, Noah poured 2 glasses of cheap wine, and they sat on the couch with careful space between them. I talked to my therapist about you, Noah said. Evelyn hadn't known he was in therapy. What did they say? That forgiveness isn't the same as trust. I can forgive you for lying. I'm working on that. But trusting you again? That's going to take longer. I understand. Do you? Because you keep showing up like everything's fine, and it's not fine. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. But you're here helping with Sophie and going to book clubs and being, he gestured vaguely, present. And it's messing with my head. Do you want me to stop coming around? No, that's the problem. I want you here, even though I'm not ready to want you here. Evelyn set down her wine glass. What do you need from me? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe just keep doing what you're doing. Show up. Be consistent. Let me figure out my own feelings without trying to manage them. I can do that. Can you? Because you're used to being in control. running companies, making decisions, fixing problems. But you can't fix this. I have to fix it myself. I know. He looked at her skeptically. I do know, she insisted. This isn't a business negotiation. I can't strategize my way back into your trust. All I can do is show you, over time, that I'm not going anywhere. Even if I never fully forgive you? The question hurt, but she answered honestly. Even then. They sat in silence for a while, drinking mediocre wine and not looking at each other. Sophie asked me if you're her mom now, Noah said quietly. Evelyn's heart stopped. What did you tell her? That it's complicated, that adults sometimes need time to figure things out. He ran his hand through his still damp hair. She said, That's a dumb answer. She's not wrong. No, she's really not. He turned to face Evelyn properly. Here's the thing. If we try this again, and I'm not saying we are, but if it can't be casual, Sophie's already attached to you. If you leave again, it'll break her heart. I'm not leaving. You say that now. But what happens when your company has a crisis? When someone offers you a CEO position somewhere else? When you remember what it felt like to be powerful and important instead of just some guy's girlfriend in a small mountain town? I stepped down as CEO. You said you're consulting. That's not the same as being done. He was right. She was still on the board. Still owned the majority of shares. Still got pulled into conference calls about quarterly earnings and strategic direction. She'd tried to step back, but the company was her baby. Letting go completely felt impossible. I don't know how to stop being that person, Evelyn admitted. The one who built something from nothing. It's been my identity for a decade. I'm not asking you to stop being that person. I'm asking if there's room in your life for this too. For me and Sophie and the mess that comes with us. There is. Prove it. It wasn't said cruelly, just as a simple challenge. Prove it. So she did. Over the next month, Evelyn made herself indispensable to Sophie's routine. She showed up for every book club, every playground visit, every random Tuesday afternoon when Noah was stuck at the shop and needed someone to pick Sophie up from day camp. She learned Sophie's favorite snacks and which stories she liked at bedtime, and that she had a complicated relationship with broccoli that required negotiation. She also started learning the shape of Noah's life, the way he always woke up at 5:30, even on weekends, how he organized his tools with obsessive precision but let his personal paperwork pile up into chaos, the fact that he was teaching himself Spanish from YouTube videos because one of his regular customers only spoke Spanish, and he was tired of using Google Translate. Why didn't you just take a class? Evelyn asked one evening while he struggled through a pronunciation exercise. Classes cost money. YouTube is free. I could pay for a class. He gave her a look. No. It would be like $50. Evelyn, no. She dropped it, but it bothered her. Not that he wouldn't take money from her. She understood that. But the way he automatically refused anything that might make his life easier, like accepting help, was some kind of moral failure. He's proud, Patricia said when Evelyn complained about it. You're going to have to let him be proud. It's inefficient. Not everything is about efficiency. I know that. Do you? Evelyn thought about the way she'd run her company, optimizing every process, eliminating waste, measuring success in metrics and margins. She'd been good at it. Great, even. But it had also turned her into someone who saw every problem as something to be solved through better systems. Noah wasn't a problem to be solved. He was a person with his own way of doing things, and if she wanted to be part of his life, she needed to respect that. So she stopped offering to fix things, stopped trying to make his life more efficient or organized, just showed up and participated in the beautiful mess of their daily existence. It was harder than running a billion-dollar company. August brought Sophie's birthday. She turned 7 with the kind of enthusiasm only children can manage, planning her party with military precision and changing her mind about the theme approximately 14 times. Dinosaurs, she declared one week. Space, she announced the next. No, wait, archaeology. We can dig for fossils. Noah looked exhausted. Bug, we need to pick something and stick with it. But they're all good. Evelyn, who had been quietly observing this debate, said, what if we combine them, dinosaurs from space who became fossils on Earth? Sophie's eyes went wide. Can we do that? It's your birthday. We can do whatever you want. So they threw a party with a space dinosaur fossil theme that made absolutely no scientific sense, but delighted Sophie completely. Evelyn helped Noah transform their small apartment into something resembling a paleontology dig site in space, complete with hidden fossils for kids to excavate and planet decorations hanging from the ceiling. The party was chaos. 12 seven-year-olds hopped up on cake and excitement, running around screaming about their fossil discoveries. One kid cried because someone else found the T-Rex skeleton first. Another somehow got frosting in her hair despite the cake being nowhere near her. Evelyn loved every minute of it. Afterward, when the last parent had picked up their sugar-crashed child and Sophie had fallen asleep still wearing her astronaut paleontologist costume, Noah collapsed on the couch next to Evelyn. "We survived," he said. "Barely. Thank you for all of this. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. Not this well." He turned to look at her. "You were really in your element today, organizing the chaos, making sure everyone was having fun, solving the great T-Rex skeleton crisis. I may have experience managing competing interests." He laughed. "I bet you do." They sat there in comfortable silence, surrounded by the wreckage of the party. Deflated balloons, stray pieces of cake, fossilized candy scattered across the floor. "I'm still not ready," Noah said quietly. Evelyn's heart sank. "Okay. But I'm getting there. Just keep showing up, please." "I will." He reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he'd touched her voluntarily since everything fell apart, and Evelyn had to fight the urge to cry. They sat like that until they both fell asleep on the couch, hands loosely intertwined, while Sophie snored softly in the next room wearing her ridiculous costume. Things got easier after that. Not perfect. There were still moments when Noah would pull back, when the hurt would flash across his face at some reminder of her deception. But the good moments started outnumbering the difficult ones. They fell into a routine that felt almost like dating, except Noah insisted on calling it spending time together, because he wasn't ready to put labels on anything. Friday nights became movie night with Sophie. Sundays, they went back to their breakfast tradition at the diner, except now Sophie came too and monopolized the conversation with increasingly elaborate stories about her week. Evelyn officially moved her base of operations to Aspen. Not full-time. She still had to go back to Denver once or twice a month for board meetings. But her apartment above the bookstore became home in a way her penthouse never had. In September, Sophie started second grade. On the first day of school, she insisted that both Noah and Evelyn walk her to the classroom. "Like a real family," she said. Noah and Evelyn exchanged glances but didn't correct her. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, greeted them warmly. "You must be Sophie's parents." "I'm her dad," Noah said quickly. "This is my friend, Evelyn." "Friend," Ms. Rodriguez repeated with a knowing smile. "Well, it's lovely to meet you both." Walking back to the parking lot after drop-off, Noah was quiet. "You okay?" Evelyn asked. "People are going to assume we're together, that you're Sophie's mom." "Does that bother you?" "I don't know. Maybe. Not because of you, because of what it means, like we're making promises we haven't actually made yet. We don't have to walk her together anymore." "That's not what I want either." He stopped walking, frustrated. "I don't know what I want, except that I want you in our lives, but I'm still scared you're going to hurt us again." "I won't." "You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that." He was right, but it still frustrated her. "So what do we do?" "I guess we just keep going, one day at a time, until I'm not scared anymore." "And if you're always scared? Then I guess we figure out how to live with it." It wasn't the romantic declaration Evelyn had been hoping for, but it was honest. And honesty, she was learning, mattered more than romance. The breakthrough came in late October, on an ordinary Tuesday that started like any other day. Evelyn was at Noah's apartment helping Sophie with a school project about weather patterns when Noah's phone rang. She could hear the panic in his voice immediately. "Slow down. What happened?" A pause. "Okay, I'm coming." He hung up and grabbed his keys. "My mom fell. She's at the hospital in Denver. I need to go." "I'll watch Sophie." "Are you sure? This might be overnight." "I'm sure. Go." He hesitated, and Evelyn could see the calculation happening. Could he trust her alone with his daughter for an entire night? Not just with Sophie's physical safety, he knew she could handle that, but with the emotional weight of being the only adult Sophie relied on. "Go," Evelyn said firmly. "We'll be fine." He left. Sophie handled the news with 7-year-old pragmatism. Is Grandma going to be okay? Your dad will make sure of it. Will you stay here? Not at your apartment? If that's okay with you. It's very okay. They finished the weather project together. Evelyn made dinner, grilled cheese because it was one of the few things she could cook reliably. They watched a movie Sophie had seen approximately 17 times. When bedtime came, Sophie asked Evelyn to read her the usual stories. Dad does the voices different, Sophie commented. How does he do them? Sophie demonstrated, making Evelyn laugh. They were halfway through the second book when Sophie asked, Are you going to be my mom? Evelyn's breath caught. That's not really up to me, sweetie. But do you want to be? She thought about lying, making it easier, giving some vague adult answer that would satisfy a 7-year-old without making promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she told the truth. Yes, I would like that very much. Then why aren't you? Because your dad is still figuring out if he trusts me. And that's okay. Trust is important. Do you trust him? Completely. Then it's not fair. You have to trust each other. That's how it works. Out of the mouths of babes, Evelyn thought. You're pretty smart, you know that? Everyone says that. Sophie snuggled deeper under her covers. But I just think grown-ups make things too complicated. After Sophie fell asleep, Evelyn wandered around the quiet apartment. She did the dishes Noah had left in the sink, folded the laundry that was piled on the chair, found herself looking at the photos on the wall, Noah's late wife smiling in what looked like a hospital room, holding newborn Sophie. She'd been beautiful, young, the kind of person who looked genuinely happy in photographs. Evelyn wondered if Noah compared them, if he looked at her and saw all the ways she fell short of the woman he'd lost. Her phone buzzed. Text from Noah. Mom's okay, broken hip, surgery tomorrow morning. I'm staying at the hospital. Evelyn. Take all the time you need. Sophie's asleep. Everything's fine here. Noah. Thank you for being there. Noah. I mean that. She stared at those 3 words for a long time. The next day was surreal. Evelyn got Sophie up, made breakfast, drove her to school, picked her up afterward. They did homework together, made dinner, went through the bedtime routine. It felt like playing house, except it wasn't playing. It was real life, messy and mundane and absolutely terrifying in how much she wanted it to be permanent. Noah called that evening after Sophie was asleep. Surgery went well. Mom's going to need rehab, but she'll recover. That's good. How's Sophie? She's fine. Worried about your mom, but handling it well. And you? I'm fine too. You sound tired. Single parenting is exhausting. I don't know how you do this every day. He laughed softly. You get used to it, though having help would be nice. There was something in his voice, something that made Evelyn sit up straighter. Noah? I'm coming home tomorrow. Can we talk? Really talk? Yes. Okay, good. He came home late the following afternoon, looking exhausted but relieved. Sophie threw herself at him, chattering about everything Evelyn had let her do, making it sound far more exciting than homework and grilled cheese. After Sophie went to bed, after much protesting and negotiating, Noah and Evelyn sat on the couch with the same careful distance they'd maintained for months. My mom asked about you, Noah said. What did you tell her? That you're important to me. That I'm trying to figure out if I can get past what happened. What did she say? She said I should stop trying to figure it out and just feel it. See if being without you feels better or worse than being with you. He turned to face Evelyn. You want to know what I realized sitting in that hospital? What? That when my mom fell, the first person I wanted to call was you. Not my brother, not my friends, you. Because I knew you'd take care of Sophie. I knew I could trust you with the most important thing in my life. Evelyn felt tears building. Noah, I'm not done. These past few months, watching you show up for Sophie, for me, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. It meant something. You proved what words couldn't, that you're serious about this, about us. I am serious. I know. I finally believe you. He reached for her hand. I can't promise I won't still have moments where the hurt comes back, where I remember the line and feel betrayed all over again. But I don't want to lose you because I'm too scared to forgive. So what does that mean? It means I want to try again, for real this time. No more just friends or spending time together. I want you to be my girlfriend. I want Sophie to have you in her life permanently. I want... His voice cracked slightly. I want to build something with you. Evelyn kissed him before he could say anything else. Kissed him like she'd been wanting to for months, like she'd been holding her breath and could finally exhale. When they pulled apart, Noah was smiling. Is that a yes? That's a yes. They sat there on his sagging couch in his small apartment, holding each other while the evening settled around them. It wasn't perfect. There would still be hard conversations ahead, moments of doubt, old wounds that needed tending, but it was real. Finally, completely real. And that was enough. Getting back together should have made everything easier. Instead, it just revealed all the problems they'd been too busy dealing with trust issues to notice. The first fight happened 3 weeks after they officially became a couple again. Evelyn had flown to Denver for a board meeting, just overnight, she'd promised, and ended up staying 3 days because of an emergency acquisition that required her signature on about 40 documents. She'd texted Noah updates, called to say goodnight to Sophie, done everything right according to the rulebook of long-distance relationship maintenance. But when she finally got back to Aspen, Noah was cold. You said one night, he said while Sophie was at school. I know, I'm sorry, it was unavoidable. Everything with your company is unavoidable. That's the problem. That's not fair. This was actually important. And we're not? Evelyn took a breath, trying not to get defensive. You are important. You and Sophie are the most important things in my life. But I can't just abandon my responsibilities. I'm not asking you to abandon anything. I'm asking you to keep your promises. I tried, but sometimes things come up. They're always going to come up, Evelyn. That's what I'm afraid of. That will always be second to whatever crisis your company is having. It was their first real argument, and it felt like all the progress they'd made was crumbling. They didn't resolve it that day, just agreed to disagree and moved on because neither of them wanted to fight. But the tension lingered. The second fight was worse. Early December, and Evelyn had promised to help Sophie with her holiday concert costume. Except a pipe burst in her Denver penthouse, the one she still owned but barely visited, and she had to deal with contractors and insurance and the whole mess of property ownership. She missed the costume fitting. Sophie cried. Noah didn't yell, which was somehow worse. He just looked disappointed. I know you're trying, he said that evening after Sophie went to bed. I can see that you're trying, but trying isn't the same as being here. I was dealing with a flood. You have people who could have handled that. You chose to handle it yourself. It's my property, and this is your life, here, with us. But you keep one foot in Denver like you're not sure this is going to work out. That hit harder than Evelyn wanted to admit. That's not true. Isn't it? You still own the penthouse. You're still on the board. You still fly back every other week for meetings that probably don't need you there. You're hedging your bets. I'm maintaining my career. No, you're maintaining an exit strategy. They didn't speak for 2 days after that, not out of malice, just because neither of them knew what to say. Evelyn stayed at her apartment, staring at her laptop and wondering if Noah was right. Was she hedging her bets? Keeping one foot in her old life because some part of her didn't believe this small-town existence could last? Sophie was the one who forced them to deal with it. She showed up at Evelyn's apartment on a Saturday morning, having walked there herself despite it being 6 blocks and definitely against the rules. You and Dad are being stupid, Sophie announced when Evelyn opened the door in panic. Does your dad know you're here? I left a note. It said, gone to fix the grown-ups. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. Come inside. We need to call your dad. Noah arrived in record time, looking equal parts furious and terrified. But before he could lecture Sophie about walking alone, the kid held up one hand. I have something to say, and you both have to listen. They sat. Sophie stood in front of them like a tiny prosecutor. You're both scared, she began. Dad, you're scared, Eva. Evelyn is going to leave. Evelyn, you're scared you're going to mess up and lose us. So you're both acting weird and it's making everything worse. Noah and Evelyn exchanged glances. Bug, it's more complicated than that, Noah started. No, it's not. You love each other, I can tell. But you're so busy being scared that you forgot to actually be together. She crossed her arms. Also, Evelyn, if you don't want to lose us, maybe stop leaving all the time. Sophie, Evelyn's voice cracked. I'm not done. Dad, if you want her to stay, maybe stop making her feel bad every time she has to work. She's important. She does important things. That doesn't mean she doesn't love us. The 7-year-old had just summed up their entire problem in 3 sentences. After Sophie's speech, after Noah had given her a serious talking to about walking alone and leaving cryptic notes, after they'd all calmed down, the 3 of them sat at Evelyn's small kitchen table. "She's not wrong," Noah said quietly. "No, she's really not. I have been making you feel guilty about your work. That's not fair." Evelyn shook her head. "And I have been keeping 1 foot out the door. That's not fair either." Sophie looked between them hopefully. "So you're going to fix it?" "We're going to try," Evelyn said. What followed was the most honest conversation they'd had since getting back together. Noah admitted he was terrified that Evelyn would eventually realize she missed her old life, the power, the prestige, the world where she was Evelyn Carter, not just Noah's girlfriend. Evelyn admitted she didn't know how to fully let go of the identity she'd built over a decade, but she wanted to figure it out. "I need to sell the penthouse," Evelyn said, "and resign from the board. Not consulting, not advising, completely step away. That's a big decision. I know, but Sophie's right. I'm hedging my bets, and that's not fair to any of us." "What about your company? You built that from nothing, and now it's something that doesn't need me anymore." She reached for his hand. "I'm not saying I'll never work again. I'm saying I want to figure out what comes next while actually being present for this. For us." Noah squeezed her hand. "I don't want you to give up who you are." "I'm not. I'm just figuring out who else I can be." Sophie, who'd been quietly eating cookies during this exchange, piped up, "Can you be someone who helps with my science project? Because it's about renewable energy, and Dad doesn't understand solar panels." They both laughed, and just like that, the tension broke. The following week, Evelyn put her Denver penthouse on the market. The real estate agent nearly had a heart attack when she saw the property. Prime location, pristine condition, the kind of place that sold itself. "This'll be gone in days," she predicted. She was right. 3 days, 4 offers, all above asking price. Evelyn accepted the highest one and felt surprisingly little about it. That penthouse had never been home. It had been a showcase, a trophy, proof that she'd made it. But home was a cramped apartment with stained carpet and a couch that sagged in the middle, and a 7-year-old who left drawings everywhere. Resigning from the board was harder. "You're serious about this," her CFO said during the call. "Completely." "Evelyn, you built this company. You can't just walk away." "I'm not walking away. I'm letting go. There's a difference. The board won't accept your resignation. They don't have a choice." It took 2 more calls and 1 final board meeting before they accepted it. Some members were relieved. She'd been a thorn in their side with her high standards and refusal to compromise. Others were genuinely sad to see her go. Patricia was the hardest. "I can't believe you're really doing this," she said over dinner in Denver, Evelyn's last trip to the city for the foreseeable future. "I have to. It's the only way this works." "What if it doesn't work anyway? What if you give up everything and he still doesn't trust you?" "Then at least I'll know I tried." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "You've changed. The old Evelyn would never have walked away from power like this." "The old Evelyn was miserable. Was she? Or was she just alone?" It was a fair question. Evelyn had been successful, respected, influential. But had she been happy? She'd convinced herself she was, but looking back, she could see the emptiness underneath all the achievement. "Both," Evelyn said finally. She was both. Winter settled over Aspen properly in mid-December. The kind of cold that made your breath visible and your fingers numb within minutes. The town transformed into a postcard. Snow-covered streets, holiday lights, tourists in expensive ski gear. Evelyn had stopped noticing the tourists, stopped seeing Aspen as a temporary escape, and started seeing it as home. She'd also started working again, just not in the way she used to. A local nonprofit needed help restructuring their fundraising strategy. She volunteered. A small business owner was struggling with operational efficiency. She consulted for free. It wasn't running a billion-dollar company, but it was useful, meaningful in a different way. Noah noticed. "You're happier," he said one evening. "I am. Even without the fancy title and the corporate headquarters, especially without those things." He pulled her closer on the couch. They'd gotten better at this. The physical intimacy that had been awkward after their reconciliation, slowly rebuilding not just trust, but comfort. I was wrong, Noah said quietly, about you keeping one foot out the door. You're all in now. I can see it. Took me long enough. Better late than never. Sophie emerged from her room, supposedly to get water, but actually to check if they were being gross and romantic again. She'd developed strong opinions about their relationship and wasn't shy about sharing them. Are you kissing? I heard suspicious silence. We're just talking, Noah said. That's what grown-ups say when they're being gross. Go to bed, Bug. Fine, but if you're going to kiss, can you warn me first? I don't want to walk in on something traumatizing. After she left, Evelyn and Noah did kiss, laughing against each other's mouths. She's going to be a nightmare as a teenager, Noah said. Can't wait. Christmas approached faster than Evelyn expected. She'd never been big on holidays. They were just days that interfered with work, occasions that required obligation gifts to employees and board members. But Sophie took Christmas very seriously. We have traditions, she explained while making a list that was already 3 pages long. We get a tree from the lot on Miller Street. We make cookies that Dad always burns. We watch all the holiday movies. We do all of it. Evelyn found herself getting swept up in it. She helped pick the tree, a slightly lopsided blue spruce that Sophie declared perfect. She made cookies with Sophie while Noah supervised, and yes, he did burn the first batch. She sat through approximately 17 holiday movies, most of which Sophie knew by heart. On Christmas Eve, after Sophie had finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Noah pulled out a small box. It's not an engagement ring, he said quickly, seeing Evelyn's expression. We're not there yet, but I wanted you to have this. Inside was a simple silver necklace with a small pendant, a compass. So you always know where home is, Noah said, looking embarrassed. I know it's cheesy. Evelyn kissed him before he could finish. It's perfect. She wore it every day after that. Christmas morning was chaos. Sophie woke them up at 6:30, which Evelyn learned was late by Sophie's historical standards. They opened presents. Evelyn had gone slightly overboard, but seeing Sophie's face made it worth it. Noah gave Evelyn a framed photo of the 3 of them from Sophie's birthday party, all of them covered in frosting and laughing. For when you forget why you gave up running a company, he said. She hung it in her apartment that afternoon, right where she'd see it every morning. January brought the kind of cold that made Evelyn question why anyone lived in the mountains voluntarily. But it also brought a routine she'd grown to love. Weekday mornings at Noah's place, getting Sophie ready for school. Evenings at the shop sometimes, watching Noah work while she read or helped with paperwork. Weekends all together, skiing or movies or just existing in the same space. It was ordinary. Beautifully, perfectly ordinary. Then, on a Tuesday in late January, everything nearly fell apart again. Evelyn got a call from her former CFO. One of her competitors was making a hostile takeover attempt at Carter Technologies. The board was in chaos. They needed her guidance, her expertise, her leadership. Just consult, he begged. You don't have to come back full-time. Just help us fight this off. Every instinct Evelyn had screamed to help. That was her company. She'd built it. She couldn't just let it be destroyed, but she'd promised. No more consulting, no more 1 foot in Denver. I can't, she said. Evelyn, they're going to tear apart everything you built. Then the board needs to defend it. I'm sorry. I can't help. She hung up and immediately wanted to call back, wanted to fix it, to strategize, to do what she was good at, but she didn't. Noah found her that evening, staring at nothing. You okay? She told him about the call, about the takeover attempt, about how hard it was to not fix things. Do you regret it? He asked, stepping away. Yes, she said honestly. And no, I regret that I can't protect what I built. But I don't regret choosing this instead. You could help them. I'd understand. I know you would, but I made a choice. I need to stick with it. He held her while she cried for the company she'd let go, for the identity she'd shed, for all the versions of herself she'd had to leave behind to become who she was now. The takeover failed. The board managed to fight it off without her, which somehow made her feel both relieved and irrelevant. She'd thought she was indispensable. Turned out the company was stronger than her ego had allowed her to believe. Patricia called to tell her the news. You could come back, she said. The board would welcome you, especially after they saw what it was like without you. I'm not coming back. Not even consulting? Not even that. I'm done, Patricia. Really done. What are you going to do instead? Evelyn looked around her small apartment, saw Sophie's art project on her table, Noah's jacket hanging by the door, the life she'd built from honesty instead of deception. I'm going to be here, she said. That's enough. February came with a snowstorm that shut down half the town. Schools closed, roads became impassable, and Sophie was thrilled to be trapped inside with both of her favorite people. We should build a fort, she declared. So they did. Used every blanket and pillow in Noah's apartment to construct an elaborate fortress in the living room. Sophie appointed herself queen, Noah was the royal mechanic, and Evelyn was apparently the royal advisor, which seemed both accurate and slightly pointed. They spent 3 days essentially living in that fort while the snow kept falling, played board games, told stories, existed in a bubble separated from the outside world. On the third night, after Sophie had fallen asleep between them in the fort, Noah whispered, I love you. It was the first time he'd said it since they got back together. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. I love you too. I know I've said I wasn't ready, that I needed time, but I'm ready now, completely. You're it for me. You're it for me too. They couldn't do anything about it with Sophie sleeping between them, but they held hands across her small sleeping form, and that felt like enough. March brought Sophie's school play, some adaptation of a fairy tale that the second grade had been practicing for months. Sophie had a small part as a talking tree, which she took very seriously. Trees are important, she informed them during rehearsal. They're often overlooked, but without them, the whole ecosystem collapses. She's been watching nature documentaries again, Noah explained. The play was exactly what you'd expect from 7-year-olds performing a fairy tale. Someone forgot their lines. Someone else cried backstage. A prop tree fell over mid-scene. It was a beautiful disaster. Sophie was magnificent, delivered every line with absolute conviction, including the ones she made up when she forgot the real ones. Afterward, in the parking lot, she ran over to them, still wearing her tree costume. Did you see me? I didn't forget any words. You made up at least 3 lines, Noah said, but I didn't forget them. I created new content. Mrs. Garcia said that's called improvisation. Evelyn laughed and lifted Sophie up, costume and all. You were the best tree I've ever seen. That's because I studied real trees. I'm a method actor. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Noah said, I want you to move in. Evelyn's heart stopped. What? Move in. Officially. Your apartment is twice the size of this place, so maybe we all move there, or we find somewhere new together. But I want us to be a family, actually living together, not just visiting. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. They started looking at houses the following week. Nothing in Evelyn's price range. She'd agreed to let Noah contribute equally to rent or mortgage, which meant looking at places far more modest than she could afford. But she didn't care. They found a small house on the edge of town with 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and a garage where Noah could keep his tools. Sophie claimed the bedroom with the window seat approximately 30 seconds after seeing it. They moved in mid-April, when the snow was finally giving way to something resembling spring. Evelyn sold most of her expensive furniture. It didn't fit the house or their life. Kept the things that mattered and bought the rest at yard sales and secondhand stores. Patricia came to visit and nearly had a heart attack. You're living in a house that's smaller than your old closet. I know. And you're happy about this? Deliriously. Patricia looked around at the mismatched furniture, the crayon marks already appearing on the walls, the general chaos of combining 3 people's lives into one space. I don't get it, she said finally. But I'm glad you're happy. You could visit more often, see what the appeal is. I'll stick with Denver, thanks. But I'm happy for you, really. May brought another crisis, but this time Evelyn was ready for it. Sophie had overheard a conversation between Noah and his mother about money, about how tight things were, how expensive it was raising a kid, how Noah was doing his best, but sometimes his best wasn't quite enough. She'd internalized that as being a burden. They found her crying in her room one evening, clutching Mr. Rabbit. What's wrong, Bug? Noah asked. I cost too much money. Noah and Evelyn exchanged horrified glances. What? No, Sophie, where did you hear that? You told Grandma. That I'm expensive, that you can't afford things because of me. Noah pulled her into his lap. Listen to me. You are not a burden. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Yes, raising a kid costs money, but that's my job and I'm good at it. You don't need to worry about that stuff. But what if you can't pay for things? Then we figure it out. Together. That's what families do. Evelyn crouched down next to them. Sophie, do you know what I did before I moved here? You worked in computers. Sort of. I made a lot of money, more money than anyone needs. And you know what? It didn't make me happy. You know what does make me happy? Being here with you and your dad. That's worth more than any amount of money. Really? Really. And if your dad ever needs help with money stuff, I can help. That's what families do too. We help each other. Sophie seemed to consider this. So I'm not a burden? You're the opposite of a burden, Noah said firmly. You're the reason I get up in the morning, the reason I work hard, the reason everything I do matters. She hugged him tight, and Evelyn felt her heart crack open. After Sophie fell asleep, Noah said, I might need to take you up on that offer. The shop's been slow. I've been stressed about money. Then let me help. I don't want your money. It's not about the money. It's about being a team. Let me contribute while you figure out the shop situation. That's what partners do. He agreed, reluctantly. Evelyn started covering more of the household expenses, and Noah stopped lying awake at night worrying about bills. It wasn't perfect. He still had pride issues about accepting help, but they were working on it. June marked 1 year since Evelyn had first met Noah at that diner. They went back to Mountain View for breakfast, sitting in the same booth where it all started. A year ago, I thought you were going to stand me up, Noah said. A year ago, I was expecting you to be terrible. Was I terrible? You were late. But otherwise? She smiled. Otherwise, you were perfect. Liar. I was a mess, still am, actually. So am I. That's the point. Sophie, who'd insisted on coming to their anniversary breakfast, made a gagging sound. You're being gross again. We're being romantic, Evelyn corrected. Same thing. After breakfast, they walked through town. The same route Evelyn had walked alone a year ago, back when she was pretending to be someone else, back when she didn't know what home felt like. I need to tell you something, Evelyn said as they reached the park. Noah's expression shifted to concern. What? I've been thinking about what's next, career-wise. Okay. I want to start a foundation, nothing huge, just something local. Help small businesses, fund education programs, support families who need it. Use the money I made for something that actually matters. That sounds amazing. Yeah? Evelyn, you don't need my permission to do good things with your money. I know. But I wanted you to know that I'm not trying to build another empire, just something meaningful, something I can do from here without traveling or missing Sophie's school stuff. He kissed her forehead. Do it. I'm proud of you. She started the foundation in July. Nothing fancy, a small office downtown, a part-time assistant, a mission statement that took her 3 weeks to write. She funded it with a fraction of her wealth, keeping the rest invested for security and Sophie's future education. The first grant went to Noah's shop, helping him upgrade equipment and hire an assistant. He protested, said it was a conflict of interest. It's my foundation, Evelyn countered. I decide what conflicts with what. People will talk. Let them. The second grant went to Sophie's school for their library, the third to a family struggling with medical bills, the fourth to a young entrepreneur trying to start a bakery. It felt good, better than closing billion-dollar deals had ever felt. August brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus showed up in Aspen, somehow having tracked down Evelyn's new life. He appeared at the house one afternoon while Noah was at work and Sophie was at day camp. Evelyn, he said when she opened the door, you look different. What do you want, Marcus? I heard about what you did, stepping down from your company, moving to some small town. I wanted to see if it was true. It's true. Now you've seen. Goodbye. She started to close the door, but he stopped it with his hand. Are you happy? He asked. Actually happy? Or are you just hiding? I'm happy. Happier than I've ever been. With a mechanic? Raising someone else's kid? This is what the great Evelyn Carter has become? She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the designer suit, the expensive watch, the carefully maintained image of success. Saw everything she used to value and nothing she wanted anymore. Yes, she said simply. This is what I've become, and it's better than anything I was before. She closed the door in his face and didn't look back. When she told Noah about it that evening, he was furious. He came to our house? It's fine, he's gone. I should have been here. Noah, it's fine, he doesn't matter anymore. But he was still angry, pacing the kitchen while Sophie practiced reading in the next room. I hate that he made you feel like you had to defend this life. Like what we have isn't enough. He didn't make me feel that way. He asked if I was happy, and I told him the truth. I am. Noah stopped pacing. Yeah? Completely. Absolutely. Sometimes I can't believe this is my life, but in a good way. Like I won some lottery I didn't know I'd entered. He pulled her close. I feel that way too. September brought Sophie's 8th birthday. This time she wanted a small party. Just a few friends, nothing elaborate. They had it in their backyard, which was finally starting to look like it belonged to them instead of whoever lived there before. Evelyn made the cake herself. It was lopsided, and the frosting was definitely not professional quality, but Sophie declared it the best cake ever, so that was what mattered. After the party, after the friends had gone home, and Sophie was organizing her presents by some system only she understood, Noah pulled Evelyn aside. I have something for you, he said. It's Sophie's birthday, not mine. I know, but this couldn't wait. He handed her a small box. Not jewelry this time, something else. Inside were 2 keys. What are these? One is to my shop, so you can come and go whenever you want. The other... He paused. The other is symbolic. It's to this house, which I know you already have a key to, but this one's different. How is it different? Because I'm giving it to you while asking if you'll marry me. Evelyn's heart stopped. What? I know we said we weren't ready, but I am ready. I've been ready. I want you to be Sophie's mom officially. I want you to be my wife. I want us to be a real family in every possible way. We're already a real family. I know, but I want to make it official, if you want that too. She kissed him instead of answering with words. Kissed him until Sophie yelled from inside the house, asking if they were being gross again. Yes, Evelyn said when they finally pulled apart. I want that too. They told Sophie that evening. She screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard, then launched into immediate wedding planning despite being 8 and having no idea how weddings worked. Can Mr. Rabbit be the ring bearer? We'll figure it out, Bug. They got married in December, almost exactly 2 years after Evelyn had first arrived in Aspen. Small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by a party at Mountain View, the diner where they'd first met. Just close friends, Noah's family, Sophie in a dress she'd picked out herself. Patricia came, still slightly bewildered by Evelyn's life choices, but supportive nonetheless. You're really doing this, she said while Evelyn got ready in the diner's back room. I really am. No regrets? Not even one. The ceremony was simple. Sophie stood between them, holding both their hands. When the judge asked if anyone objected, Sophie said absolutely not, with such conviction that everyone laughed. Evelyn became Sophie's mom that day, officially and legally, became Noah's wife, became part of something bigger than herself or her achievements or her carefully constructed identity, became, finally, who she was meant to be. The reception was chaotic and perfect. Someone's kid spilled punch on the floor. The cake, from an actual bakery this time, was delicious. Sophie gave a speech about how she'd always known they'd be a family, which made everyone cry. Noah pulled Evelyn onto the makeshift dance floor for their first dance. Neither of them was particularly good at dancing, but they swayed together while Sophie danced circles around them. No regrets? He asked, echoing Patricia's question. Not even one, she said, echoing her answer. Even though you gave up being a CEO, being powerful and important? I'm still important, just to different people, better people. We're not better than you are. You saw me when I was nobody and treated me like I was somebody. That's better than anyone in my old life ever did. He held her tighter. You were never nobody. I felt like nobody. Until you. Sophie crashed into them, insisting on joining the dance. They made room for her and she stood on Noah's feet while he turned in slow circles. This was it, Evelyn thought. This was what she'd been looking for during those 27 failed dates. Not someone who wanted her money or her status, Not someone who saw her as a prize to be won or a resource to be exploited. Just someone who saw her, all of her, and decided she was enough. The three of them danced together while snow fell outside the diner windows, and Evelyn felt something she'd been chasing her entire life without knowing what it was. Peace, belonging, home. Not in a place, though she loved Aspen and their small house and the life they'd built there, but in these people, in this makeshift family that had formed from honesty and patience and the terrifying vulnerability of being completely known. Years later, when people asked Evelyn about her success story, she'd tell them about Carter Technologies, about building a billion-dollar company from nothing, about exits and acquisitions and board meetings, the story people expected. But the real success story was smaller, quieter. It was about a woman who'd lied about her identity and nearly lost everything because of it. About learning that being loved required being known, and being known required being honest, even when honesty felt like jumping off a cliff. It was about a mechanic who'd lost his wife and raised his daughter alone and somehow found room in his scarred heart for someone new. About trust rebuilt slowly, one day at a time, through showing up and being present and choosing each other repeatedly. It was about a 7-year-old who'd needed a mom and found one in the most unlikely person. About a family built not from biology or convenience, but from conscious choice and stubborn commitment. Sophie grew up surrounded by love and books and the knowledge that she was wanted. Went to college, became a teacher, never forgot the lessons she'd learned from watching her parents navigate their complicated beginning. That honesty mattered more than perfection, and showing up mattered more than success. Noah's shop thrived with Evelyn's help, became a fixture in the community. He never got comfortable with money, but he learned to accept help, learned that partnership meant letting someone else carry weight sometimes. And Evelyn? She ran her small foundation, helped local businesses, funded scholarships, used her strategic mind for good instead of profit. Never regretted stepping away from the empire she'd built. Never missed the penthouse or the board meetings or the version of herself who'd measured worth in dollars and influence. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they went back to Mountain View for breakfast. Same booth, same diner, different lives. "You know what I was thinking?" Noah said over coffee. "What?" "That first morning when I was late and you were probably going to leave, but you didn't. What made you stay?" Evelyn thought about it. About the 26 failed dates before him, about how close she'd come to giving up on the whole experiment. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe I was just tired of leaving. Maybe I sensed something different about you. Maybe it was random luck." "You don't believe in luck." "I didn't used to, but how else do you explain this?" "Us? All of it?" Sophie, now 10 and somehow even more opinionated, looked up from her book. "It wasn't luck. It was Dad being late. If he'd been on time, you probably would have decided he was boring and left." "Hey," Noah protested. "I'm just saying, your lateness might have saved your relationship." Evelyn laughed. "She's not wrong." "I'm rarely wrong," Sophie said matter-of-factly, going back to her book. They sat there in the worn booth with terrible coffee and pretty good pancakes, and Evelyn thought about all the versions of herself she'd tried on over the years. The ambitious entrepreneur, the betrayed fiancé, the woman with a fake name running tests on unsuspecting men, the person trying desperately to prove she was worth loving for something other than her bank account. All those versions had led her here, to this booth, this family, this perfectly imperfect life. She reached across the table and took Noah's hand. He squeezed back, and Sophie made a gagging sound but smiled while doing it. Outside, Aspen woke up slowly on a Sunday morning. The town she'd chosen as an escape had become home. The temporary fix had become permanent. The test had become real. And Evelyn Carter, once billionaire CEO, now wife and mother, and the woman who ran the town's smallest foundation, had never been richer.